Good evening, everyone. We are live on our D-Day Squadron YouTube channel. We're very excited. We had just a little hiccup with the streaming key from Zoom to YouTube, so we have redirected to our official
Good
D-Day
evening,
Squadron.
Everyone. We are live on our D-Day Squadron YouTube channel. We're very excited. We had just a little hiccup with the streaming key from Zoom to YouTube.
Sorry about that. All I had some background audio there, but we want to welcome you to our Women in DC-3 live broadcast. I can't get enough of this wonderful virtual opportunity that we can provide to you. This is our third live broadcast that the D-Day Squadron is offering in this last year. And because it is Women's History Month, we want to end the month with giving you a taste of all there is to know about DC-3s, from piloting, maintaining, jumping from the women of this great community and this legendary aircraft. My name is Lindsay Costabile of the D-Day Squadron. I'm going to be excited to just go over a few housekeeping items here. We do have a live chat going on, so please make sure that you are looking at that live chat, that you are asking some questions of these amazing women around the DC-3. I'm going to add a Google form questionnaire into the live chat. And why are we doing the Google form questionnaire? It is because we have some fantastic gifts to give away for our audience tuning in. What are those gifts, you may ask? Well, we have an autographed signed copy of Every Reason to Fail, of the story of Miss Montana to Normandy. We actually have two lovely ladies here on the call that, yes, jump from and fly Miss Montana. And it's your own very own signed copy of the book from the author, Brian Douglas. And we also have our official D-Day Squadron flight patch that will go out to a lucky winner. We also have flight patches coming from Hairless Joe at the Yankee Air Museum, thanks to one of our speakers, Rachel, who will introduce herself here in a little bit. And there's a few extra D-Day Squadron goodies, but make sure you finish the questionnaire, complete that, and we'll give you a week to do so. So without further ado, I am going to turn this stage over to our fantastic moderator, Julie Boatman, the editor-in-chief for Flying Magazine. We appreciate her taking charge again for this live broadcast. And Julie, the show is yours.
Thanks a lot, Lindsay. You know, it's an incredible honor to share the stage, as it were, with such a wonderful group of pilots and paratroopers, some really impressive resumes. And I can't tell you how incredible that is. So before I say anything about about my own connection with the DC-3, I just want to humbly say that, you know, I kind of bow before the pilots and paratroopers who are in this virtual room with us. My name is Julie Boatman. I'm the editor-in-chief of Flying Magazine. And my connection with the DC-3 started with a love of it. Many, many years ago. It was a dream aircraft, and I got the opportunity to fly it back in 2005 for a story for another magazine that I worked for at the time, and for the 70th anniversary of its first flight. And from that, got a type rating. Never flew it professionally at all, but I've had the opportunity to get in a lot of them over the years. But that led to my own pursuit of more of the stories behind the DC-3, because it wasn't just the airplane. I mean, the airplane's phenomenal, but what had always, you know, really touched me were the people that were involved with the airplane, from its original conception and design by Donald Douglas and the team of engineers at Douglas Aircraft, to everyone who threw together to build the airplane, particularly once we ramped up for World War II, and formed, a very important part of the arsenal of democracy that was really one of the key facets that helped us win that horrible conflict. And I know that, that's particularly important with this group because the stories that you guys are sharing with us relate a lot to the airplane's use during World War II. And in particular, the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of D-Day that took place in 2019. And we'll talk with several folks who participated in that, but from someone who had the opportunity to be on the ground there and report on the story for flying. It was such a moving experience that, it's hard to encapsulate in one piece. So hopefully as I ask you questions and you get to share your stories, your voices from the DC-3 as they were, that you can in particular, bring out any memories of that particular time. If you can't think of anything else. With that introduction, I would like to go ahead and have Jenny Kanakis, who is the pilot for D-Day Doll, which is a C-53 designation with the Inland Empire Wing down in Southern California. If she would like to go ahead and introduce herself, and then I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to the next story. So Jenny, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Julie. So thank you for including me, first of all, and then thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm really happy to be a part of this. Like you said, I'm Jenny Kanakis. I'm 28 years old, and I've been flying for about 10 years in Southern California. I'm a CFI, and I'm an aircraft owner, and I'm also a military combat airlift mobility pilot for the Channel Islands Air National Guard here in California, and I fly the C-130J Super Hercules. I've been flying DC-3s, C-47s, C-53s for about 6 years now privately, and then I started flying for the CAF about a year ago. I currently fly the D-Day Doll from the Inland Empire Wing, so I've been doing that for about a year, which is a lot of fun. I got to fly out to Edwards Air Force Base to deliver it for test pilot school a month ago or 2 months ago. So that was really incredible to land at that airport. But I can't wait to answer all of your questions, so shoot. Oh, Julie, I think you're muted.
We had to go through this at least once, the mute, unmute thing. So anyway, glad to get that out of the way. So you have the unique perspective of having flown both the C-53, C-47 that was so instrumental in the war, 75, 80 years ago, and now flying, kind of a modern equivalent in terms of, I can't think of many aircraft that have a similar breadth of utility as the C-130. Do you want to talk a little bit about any similarities, differences, what, transitioning between the two aircraft is like?
Sure. So I didn't touch the C-130 until about 2018. So I started in DC. I didn't start in DC-3s, but I flew them before I flew the C-130. And that is what taught me about crew resource management and flying with a crew. And the Air Force has built upon that. So flying the C-130 really has helped me become a better DC-3 pilot. Similarities mission-wise, it's the same. What it did in the war, we do today as a cargo hauler and personnel airdrop platform. I really haven't done cargo with the DC-3, and I haven't done personnel airdrop yet. I hope to do that someday. I do that with the C-130, but it is awesome to fly the same airplane from two different eras of military aviation. So technologies have progressed, but there's a beauty about flying a twin engine radial tailwheel aircraft that's 70 or 80 years old. And I get to pay homage to the mobility pilots before me by keeping them flying, by continuing to fly these aircraft. So similarity wise, the only thing that's really similar is there's two pilots and a crew chief or a loadmaster, and you can put stuff in the back. But it's what I love about it is the incredible connection that I have to the pilots and even women pilots that came before me flying these aircraft.
Sure. And that initial transition that you made, you moved step by step through being a flight instructor, but getting your commercial, your multi, your tailwheel endorsement, and your high performance endorsement in order to prepare yourself for learning about the DC-3. I know a common question is that transition. It's such a big tailwheel airplane. Was that something that was challenging or daunting to you when you first flew it?
It's definitely challenging. So I was working and volunteering for a company called Aviator Flight Training out of Cable Airport, and they operate tailwheel and radial aircraft. And I asked them, how do I get into that DC-3? What do I got to do? I'm sweeping the floors, and they said, well, get your private instrument commercial multi-engine high performance tailwheel. And I'm like writing all these things down. Wow, that's a lot. And it took years. I started flying in 2011, and I didn't touch a DC-3, at least the controls of one, until 2015. So it was difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It took a lot of debt and a lot of sweeping the hangar and washing the DC-3, which is not an easy task. But it was worth it. Definitely worth it.
Excellent. Well, we'll move on so that we can get some questions in front of everybody. Let's jump to Kim Maynard with Miss Montana. So Kim, Dr. Maynard, I should say, was the Jumpmaster for Miss Montana, and she's with the Museum of Mountain Flying out in Missoula. Would you like to tell us a bit about your story, Kim?
Sure. Yes. Thank you for D-Day Squadron, and to you, Julie and Lindsay, for putting this on, and for it's just such an honor, because D-Day Squadron was such a history with Miss Montana as we were working our way into actually flying. And so I just feel like especially flattered to be able to be here. So I am not a pilot. I was a smoke jumper and was among the first women in Region 2, the second in the country to pass rookie training and go through all the jump school and stuff. And then part of that was jumping out of DC-3. So early on, so this is in the 80s, DC-3 was one of our primary planes, and it was extra special because it was such a gorgeous, beautiful plane in flight to be in. You could spread out. We have all this jump gear, the cargo that we throw out after we jump, and you can sit on top of it. It's not squished like pretty much all the other jump planes. You put a lot of people in it and get a lot of people to a fire quickly. So maybe I should say a little bit about smoke jumping is parachuting into remote areas to fight forest fires, for those who don't know that. And it's mostly in the West, and there's 6 jump bases in the nation. So I was in Missoula, Montana. And I mean, it was just such a great life, albeit challenging at first, being one of the first women that, there's a lot of people who said, I don't think so. You're not going to do that. But it ended up being fantastic. And they're some of my closest friends. Then later on in my career, I ended up getting applied for, and I got positioned to be what we call a squad leader, which it means a supervisor. There hadn't been any smoke jumper supervisors anywhere. And so that means that you also get to be a spotter, what we call spotters, which military calls jumpmasters. And so that means kicking people out of the airplane, telling them when to go, reading the ground, that kind of thing. And I can talk more about that if it's interesting. So that was really amazing. And with my friend Pat Norbury, who's here, she was the first woman pilot in the DC-3, and I was the first woman, what we call Jumpmaster, to kick people out of a DC-3. So that was pretty fun. Then after that, I left jumping after 9 years and started a career in international humanitarian assistance, working in war zones primarily, but also natural disasters around the world. And in a lot of those areas, there's pretty far-reaching little villages and so forth, and dirt airstrips and so forth. And so the DC-3 was a very useful and common plane in places like Africa. So I flew in those a lot, and it was like being back home. Oh, hey, I even sent pictures to my smoke jumper buddies. Hey, here's DC-3 in West Africa. And then I'll just say that to bring it up to date is Miss Montana. So the DC-3 that we jumped in and flew and jumped in Normandy was also a plane that, after it got its birth to be a plane in World War II, it never made it there because the war ended, became a smoke jumper plane. And we, Johnson Flying Service was the operation. And many of you probably know the story, but one of the places where she jumped smoke jumpers was at Man Gulch, and where 13 firefighters got burnt, a lot of smoke jumpers. And so here we were working on hers. That was just incredible. And I got the opportunity to be the first one to jump out of her in 45 years. And we fixed her up and had the opportunity to do a practice jump, and then fly to Normandy and do that famous jump on June 4th.
So I was on the ground and witnessed the jump from the ground, which was probably one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in my life. Just absolutely nothing like it. Was there any, because you were coming from a smoke jumping perspective rather than like a reenacting perspective, was there any research that you did or any particular stories that you heard, maybe at Duxford, that you took with you when you and the 18 other paratroopers went out the door over that over that field in France?
Yeah, actually, just a little quick history, which is really, really cool. So actually, paratrooping in the United States the idea was sparked from smoke jumping. There's a guy who came out to watch our smoke jumping program in 1940, and then came back and started the paratrooping program in the United States. And so, smoke jumping to military, and then Miss Montana becoming a smoke jumping plane, and now going back into the military mode of going back to Normandy. So it was really, really cool. I did have to learn how to do military style exits. And in smoke jumping, we have a static line cord that is very short, and it's right next to the door. And it's because we would jump 2 people at a time. And military have a long static line cable that goes through the airplane, and 20 people can hook up at once. So that was different. In smoke jumping, you don't, the spotter or the jump master doesn't jump, just tells slaps the paratrooper on the leg, and they go out, and then the next person right behind them just goes out immediately. So learning how to do that, and I have the fortune of having a husband who's a military parachute expert and jump master, and so I got all the training I needed. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, fantastic. So that really kind of connects things back full circle. What is, do you have any other plans for other kinds of reenactments here this season? Here in the U.S. with Miss Montana, is she going to be out and about, and are those kinds of things going to happen with her schedule?
Well, we sure hope so. It's looking like we may do something in June over at Fort Lewis in Washington. I may even get to jump, but because of the COVID thing, we have kept her on the ground for a year, and now really excited about going back up in the air, and some of us are excited about jumping. But the insurance, paying for the insurance over the course for a full year is, a lot of money. So we got to make sure that we have enough opportunities. But it looks like there will be, yes, going to shows. And I know there's a lot of people who are hankering to have her come in and either land or fly over or jump or something. So there are plans in the making. Let's put it that way.
Excellent. Well, with that, let's talk to the pilot of Miss Montana, and one from a historical perspective has some unique stories to share. Pat Norbury, who in 1989 was hired by the U.S. Forest Service to serve as a co-pilot on the DC-3, dropping smoke jumpers out of the base at Missoula. Pat, would you like to share with us your history, your unique biography?
I'd be happy to, Julie. Thank you. And thanks to you and Lindsay for putting this together. And it's a great privilege to be here with the rest of the ladies that have a connection to the DC-3. I think we all realize how privileged we are to be able to operate this fabulous aircraft. And just a small correction, I did not fly Miss Montana. There was a long line of folks who wanted to do that, and I was way far back in that. But just a little bit on my background. I was raised in Montana, farming and ranching. My dad had airplanes, J3 Cubs, Super Cubs. I grew up flying with him. And interestingly enough, his flight instructor was his sister-in-law. She was a WASP during World War II. So I had aviation kind of from the time I was born, and had a lot of fun doing that. Like you said, in 1989, I was working as an ag pilot, crop dusting here in Montana, and doing the standard stuff, flight instruction, charter work, and got an opportunity to apply for a job with the U.S. Forest Service. And they were looking for a DC-3 co-pilot, and I couldn't believe my good fortune. I think all of us as pilots, we have our bucket lists, aircraft that, boy, one day I want to fly. And I had two on my list. One was a Beech 18 and one was a DC-3. And I really didn't have any hope that I either get to fly any of them. So here I was offered a job to come fly the DC-3. So I took that, and that started a 23-year career with the U.S. Forest Service. So I served as the co-pilot on the DC-3 for a couple years, and then became qualified as a smoke jumper captain on a couple other aircraft, the King Air 200 and then the DHC-6 Twin Otter. Twin Otter is a great aircraft. It's like a miniature DC-3 almost, except that its tail's not on the ground. In 1992, I'll back up a minute. The Forest Service operated 2 DC-3s, and we had 2 of the lowest time DC-3s in the world, about 14,000 and 15,000 hours total time, respectively. And the Forest Service is unique in that it's a land management agency with an aviation function built into it. And as such, it doesn't really have a standalone aviation staff. So we work under fire. So Kim, my good friend Kim, works under fire as well. Smoke jumpers fall under that. Aviation fell under that. And the folks that were managing our aviation program, while not professional aviators, thought that perhaps it was time to either get rid of the DC-3s because we were running the radial engines. We had the, the original Pratt & Whitney R1830s on there. Maintenance is high, reliability wasn't particularly stellar, but they decided we either upgraded the aircraft or we needed to get rid of them. And fortunately for us, they made the decision to go with the turbine conversion. We contracted with Basler Turbo Conversions out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And by 1993, our 2 DC-3s were now turbine powered. They're running the PT6-67Rs. A couple other modifications on them, up the gross weight a little bit, but primarily it added 4,000 pounds to our useful load and about 50 knots to our cruise speed, but a very, very made a versatile airplane just phenomenal after that. Then I had the opportunity to get my type rating. So my type rating in the DC-3 is in the turbine converted, not the original radio. I wish I could have had both, but at least I have one. So then I began flying as a captain on the DC-3. And as Kim said, she and I had a great opportunity to work together. I can still remember, Kim, I don't know if you remember this, when we came back from that flight where you qualified as the spotter and I was the pilot and Marguerite was jumping and people were making all kinds of fuss about these 3 women. And we were like, what's the big deal? Let's load up and go again, do it again. Anyway, so I had a really phenomenal, I think, career with the Forest Service in the smoke jumper side of things. But as a Forest Service pilot, you can't usually just do one thing. So I also qualified as a lead plane pilot. We take King Air 90s when I had finally left, and we're a forward air control platform, primarily in front of the air tankers. Jenny, who works with Channel Islands National Guard, they operate some of our MAFS units when we have a need and we can't meet it with our contract air tankers. We have 4 National Guard units that come in and with their C-130s and help with the fire retardant delivery. So we would fly in front of those aircraft. We're not as spectacular as all that red retardant coming out of them, so you never see us. But so I did that, qualified in a few other aircraft. The C-23A, we were running those as smoke jumper aircraft. We got those from the on military excess, and we were converting those. But again, the DC-3 was far and away my absolute favorite aircraft from a tactical operational perspective. I mean, to be able to fly an aircraft like that from the historical perspective is pretty special, but we were there to do a job. Kim had her job in the back of the airplane. I had my job in the front of the airplane. No matter what airplane we were in, our job was to deliver firefighters quickly and safely to get those fires out in what we call the initial attack phase. And the DC-3 was probably the best platform. And again, as Jenny mentioned, with the C-130, I took a leave of absence from the Forest Service mid-career for an extensive period of time, and I flew C-130s overseas, mostly Africa and South America. And what impressed me with that aircraft was it was just like a big DC-3. I was first flight into a pretty high altitude airport in Peru. I was looking at this really short field and a really, we were at gross weight, and I thought, well, this is as good a place to die as any. It's pretty nice up here, in the Andes. And as I'm watching the airspeed indicator going, this is DC-3 speeds that we're flying in this C-130, and it was phenomenal. So after I came back to the Forest Service, I did that stint, a lot of good operational experience there, came back to the Forest Service and got into the national aviation staff at that point. I became the national fixed wing standardization pilot for the U.S. Forest Service. Did that for 3 years, and then I moved into the national aviation operations officer position. And unfortunately, there's not as much flying in that. You're managing the national aviation program from that perspective. So I wasn't able to continue to fly. I stayed current, but I wasn't a line pilot anymore. So retired in 2012. And quite honestly, I don't do much flying anymore because there isn't much out here that compares to what I was able to do. You know, flying is fine, but once you've had that DC-3, it's hard to go back to anything else. So any questions on that part, aerial firefighting or working with the, you know, the folks like Kim? Happy to answer any of that.
Sure. Well, one specifically that I have, because I've visited Basler and, you know, for various things, and contemplated, you know, what it would be like to fly a DC-3 with PT-6s on it. And it was something that just, you know, I always thought would be, you know, an incredible transition for an airplane, you know, as much as we love the smell of 100 low lead and those radial engines, you know, they're not going to live forever, probably. So, you know, I see the 67 conversion as the way that they will, you know, the way that they'll be flying at, you know, 100 years old. What were the handling differences? You know, did the tail come up faster on the takeoff roll? Did, you know, what other than, you know, like probably a much improved climb, you know, performance, things like that? What were the differences between the two aircraft for you?
Well, the first thing I can tell you is it's much easier to start those turbine engines than it is the radial engines. We already, we had a deal. Anytime you popped a cylinder on a start, you had to buy beer. So I bought a lot of beer when I first started flying the radials. But the performance of the aircraft was vastly improved with those turbine engines from an operational standpoint. When we're doing the type of flying that Kim and I were involved in, we drop smoke jumpers at 1,500 feet. Usually it's in mountainous terrain. I mean, if you can drive to a fire, they're going to drive them to a fire. We're taking them by air because it's in a remote backcountry type of setting. So to get them into, and the jump spots are tiny. I mean, if you had a 1/4 acre, Kim, that was probably a gift, wasn't it? But to manage the engines on a radial DC-3, you had to do a lot of planning, and there was a lot of time involved with slow descents. You had to do a lot more operational strategizing, I'll put it that way. Our cargo drops go in at 150 feet. And again, very, very small openings in the tall timber. So you've got to be fairly accurate, but with the radials, you needed to have a pretty good exit out of there, because you really can't just, you know, you're not running and gunning like you can with a turbine engine. So that was the most probably significant difference. As far as handling characteristics, not really. The gross weight went up, maximum takeoff weight went up. Like I said, we added 4,000 pounds to our useful load. So there wasn't an incredibly large change in climb characteristics or anything like that. Tail came up at the same time, you know, same issues flying a big tail wheel as you had with the other one. They stretched that fuselage, I want to say it was almost 40 inches longer. But, you know, with an aircraft that long, doesn't make that 40 more inches, doesn't make that much difference. So it was primarily in what you could do from an operational standpoint. We were able to be much more efficient and effective in delivering jumpers and cargo. And we used them a lot for backcountry resupply and things like that too. So it just made it such a more capable aircraft than what we were using before with the radials. And unfortunately, the Forest Service in 2015 accessed the last DC-3. They just, for whatever reason, thought they ought to be replaced. So they're gone now. But like I said, it was quite a privilege I had to be able to operate them for as long as I did.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, thank you for those incredible stories. We're going to move on and go to Rachel Linvik, who will give us, share with us her perspectives. She's a pilot with Hairless Joe, C-47 with the Yankee Air Museum in Willow Run Airport in Michigan. So some different background. Would you like to share with us, Rachel, how you got into flying and got into the C-47?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Julie, and again, Lindsay, and everyone over here. This is really awesome. Like she said, my name is Rachel. I do have a little bit of a different background than everyone else. I am fortunate enough, I was able to attend the University of North Dakota, where I did all of my flight training and education up there, got a bachelor's degree in commercial aviation and flight education with the emphasis on the education side. And I was really super lucky. I was able to be a flight instructor while I was at UND. I taught everything from private pilots all the way through initial CFI, and I was fortunate to be able to also teach in a seaplane. So that was kind of a nice, fun change over the summer. And got my tailwheel endorsement, did aerobatics, all that type of thing up there. I then left for the airlines, started out at the regionals, worked up. I'm now actually a pilot for American Airlines, flying the Airbus A320. That's my regular day job. I was fortunate enough, I ended up over near Willow Run Airport. Most people know it better as Detroit, the Detroit area, or where Henry Ford produced the famous B-24. Rosie the Riveter came out of historic Willow Run Airport. So I'm very fortunate. Yankee Air Museum actually does have the last 2% of the building that B-24s were built and final assembly came rolling out of the doors. Getting involved with them and finding out this history just really, really excited me. And I started working with our Women in Aviation group and got to know many of the people working for Yankee Air Museum. And that led me into meeting some of the pilots, meeting the chief pilot for the airplane. And he found out that, I really did enjoy education and writing books. So I actually had the opportunity over the past year working with our maintenance personnel and working with our pilots, other pilots, chief pilots, and a few other groups around the country. I rewrote an entire systems book that hadn't been touched since the 80s and created from scratch a flight training manual for the airplane, which was really cool because we got a whole bunch of different input from everyone for that. And this year I have a new task. It's not writing this time, but because I am gifted with the ability of knowing how to sew and mend things, several of the other pilots have found some kind of neat pieces to the aircraft that they would like to reproduce. So I'm actually in the process of creating patterns to sew up these new bags and new attachment pieces, just for mostly display purposes now. But it's something unique to give character to Hairless Joe, which was one of the later airplanes built and never seen action. But our paint scheme on it is actually very different from everyone else. It's not actually a D-Day paint scheme. It's a little different. It actually honors the China-Burma India Theater. So all the great people that fought on that side of the war, which is something completely different.
Yes, totally. My only family connection to the DC-3 was through my great uncle, Bob, who flew in the CBI. And he flew mostly the C-46 when he was there, but he also did fly the C-47. He never talked about it before, he passed away, unfortunately, and I was pretty young. So I never got to talk with him about it, but you're absolutely right. So that's very cool that Hairless Joe honors that legacy, which is, another just incredible number of stories there. So when you're recreating flight manuals, for the pilots who are watching, who grew up with modern day aircraft, the DC-3, even though it was ahead of its time in terms of having good, actually having performance charts and things like that, but still, things were very hit and miss. What did you have to go from? Were there any original manuals that you had to access when you were putting together the new manuals?
The manuals that I had, we did a combination of a ton of different books. We took some early ones. The early ones we found were mostly from the 50s and a couple excerpts from the 40s. Otherwise, the museum, when they had acquired the airplane in, I believe it was 1982 or 3, they had written manuals then. So we used some of their original stuff, and then we also used some references from old cargo air carriers as well. So we kind of combined the best practices of everybody that we could to try and make it fit everything. And everything updates over time, so we made sure to include new modern pieces that we had added to the airplane.
Excellent. Asking a different question because of your connection with the Air Museum and your interest in education. One of the critical things that that I know is important to folks who operate the DC-3, the C-47 today, is translating the stories and getting that history across to the next generation. Do you have any particular thoughts about how we can do that? Are there any examples that you can pull out that will help this history come alive for young people?
Actually, the best example that I've used with several people, and it doesn't matter if it's a younger person or someone that's a little older, everyone has pretty much looked up in the sky and seen, they see all the commercial jets up in the sky, all the contrails going everywhere. Well, how did they get there? You had to start somewhere. So now you can start and relate to the aircraft starting everything, the DC-3 back in the late 30s. That's how, my company, American Airlines, really got going. They were instrumental in bringing the DC-3 to life because they wanted to be able to provide the customers with the ability to get across the country in a timely manner. So helping that they can see the evolution of, oh, this is where it started. Okay, cool. I can still do this today. I can go fly commercially and I can have some fun too, because let's just face it, this is fun flying for a lot of us. The airplane is just awesome.
It truly is. Do you have a particularly memorable flight that you've made? Have you had a chance to take the airplane somewhere, or do something that that sticks in your mind?
Last year, COVID shut everything down, and it was unfortunate. They canceled most of the schedule. However, in Michigan, they did the Greatest Generation flyover over in Lansing and Grand Rapids. So that's kind of the opposite side of the state from us. But I was fortunate enough, we took our B-17 Yankee Lady, our then was named B-25 of Yankee Warrior, and Hairless Joe in formation and flew a round robin trip over honoring the Greatest Generation and you just could see crowds of people scattered throughout the whole route. We had it all planned out, had everything like that. You look down and you just see pockets of people everywhere along the way. Well, on Hairless Joe, we were very fortunate because it has all the space, like Pat and Kim were talking about, it has tons of space back there. We were able to actually have a full camera crew from the news channels back there, and they were able to film the entire thing. So that was so incredible, having the view of just looking out, and we're literally have our bomber escort of the B-17 on one side and the B-25 on the other, and we're just going as fast as we can make that go. That was a blast. Absolutely awesome.
Amazing. That is a great, out of the ashes of COVID, you have, you still get some amazing things. So we're going to catch up now with our last but incredibly interesting pilot, Kathleen Leoni, who is with Desert Air Alaska, which is a cargo operator up in the great state of Alaska. Kathleen, would you like to give some of your background, share your history?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Bonjour, c'est Kathleen at Desert Air Alaska. In French or in English?
En français.
En français? Okay. No, so yeah, my name is Kathleen Leoni. I'm from France. I started flying about 12 years ago. It started with brevet d'initiation aéronautique in France. It's like the first step of a private pilot license. It's an introduction to flying. And then I did my first flight in Ireland in a biplane, a Stamp. So that's basically how I fell in love with aviation, and it was aboard a vintage aircraft already. And I remember at the time I wanted to become a pilot, but it all depends on the people you meet along the way. It really shapes your destiny sometimes. I wanted to join the military, and at the time they said with the literature stream, you need to be a scientific person. You will never be able to be a pilot, blah, blah, blah. So I was young, so I kind of believed it, but I thought I still want to make a career in aviation. So I will work hard, study hard, and, make a good living and try to earn my ratings this way. And so I did a master's degree in aviation law and air transport management, which led me to do an internship with the search and rescue. And I discovered a helicopter there, and one thing led to another. I flew the helicopters, and all the former pilots there told me, hey, we all come from the military, you should try. Take the test and you will see. So I did, and actually passed all of them. So I served for the French military. After that, convert all my EASA ratings into FAA ones. But then you might ask, what's the connection with the DC-3? So I went to an air show about also 10 years ago, and I met a very interesting person there also who helped me in my DC-3 path. His name is Marco Remland. He was a DC-3 owner, and he had the fantastic dream of recreating the pioneer journey of an aviatrix, Jean Batten. And he wanted to redo with his DC-3 the travel that she had undertaken in 1936 from England to New Zealand. So for 6 months, we restored the airplane, and I worked with him on the communication work, make sure that the trip is known worldwide, and to help him making his dream come true. I ended up taking part in the journey, and we made it. It took us 3 weeks. And since then, really, I felt hooked. I was hooked with the airplane, and I was just a private pilot at the time, but my dream was to fly the DC-3. It had become a requirement. I had to do it one day. So all the decisions I've made after that had led me and eventually there. So 4 years in the military, then back, then in the USA, and I always thought that the place where this dream could happen would be in the US, because this is obviously where the DC-3 was born, and this is where there are the most flying still nowadays. So I went to Oregon. I took all my FAA certificate there, from private until MEI. And so I was there for 3 years. And then I wanted to go to Alaska just for a taste of adventure, you know. And you know, over all those 10 years, I had created connections in the DC-3 community. And when I posted on Facebook, I'm coming to Alaska, the owner of Desert Air, the company I work for now, Joey Benetka, said, hey, we have 2 DC-3s here. You should come and check them out when you arrive. So I arrived to Alaska, and sure thing, the first thing I did when I arrived in the car, I went to see the company. And then I had been hired in Palmer, which is a frontier town in the northeast of Anchorage, as a flight instructor. But then COVID hit. I worked there like 2 weeks, and then the school shut down, but Desert Air kept operating, and they would come to this little airport. So I would go there and help them, you know, every time I had the opportunity to load or unload the airplane. And one day, you know, we say the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? I asked, hey, could I jump seat by any chance? And the cap said, yes, you deserve it. You have helped us, so why not? And, you know, one thing that led to another. I was just so much into it. It was like I had so much drive that one day I asked Joey, hey, don't you need another SIC, second in command? He said, no, we don't need any other SIC. I have a pile of resumes. I'm tired. But like, well, you should have another SIC though, just in case. You know, you should have a pool of them. And, you know, that worked. He told me he had never seen somebody who is that much passionate about DC-3s. That was convincing to him. So I would learn on the return leg. So Desert Air is a charter company. They transport cargo all over the state of Alaska, up to 200 destinations. And so usually the inbound legs are full of freight, but then the return leg are empty. So I would jump seat on the inbound leg and then learn to fly the plane on the way back. And this is how I learned. And then I landed my first DC-3, and then I took my SIC check ride to work for the company. And I worked there since last summer. And that has been wonderful so far. It's a great company. They use the plane not like in a museum. They really use it as a working machine. You know, certainly the way it was used at the beginning in the world, you know, in very rugged places. And it's amazing what we can still do with this airplane, how reliable it still is after 85 years of existence. They do such a great job. With their large doors, you know, we can fit a lot of things in there. If it fits, it flies. This is what we say to our customers. We can carry everything like timber, lumber, snow machines, generators, small boats, oil, fuel, drill pipes, furniture, etc., etc., even moose or bisons in the hunting season. It's a plane which is really good to land and take off from very short distance. And again, it's still very, very reliable, and we love flying it. And you know, it's the job I do here in Alaska. I'm not only grateful to be able to fly the plane of my dreams in one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's every time you go to one of these villages, you really help to make the life of these people better. They, you know, all these things that we take for granted, a fridge, a couch, for these people, it's very special, and you help their life. You make their life better, and this is so rewarding. So there is no better job in the world for me right now. I'm very lucky, and I'm conscious of it. Yep.
That sounds incredible. Yes. Yes. No, the DC-3 was critical in opening up Alaska. In the 1950s, you know, it was something that was used by the FAA when they were, you know, kind of making Alaska air transport possible, really, and led by, you know, so many pioneers. So you're really flying in their contrails, right? As you make it around the great state. Are there any destinations in particular that stand out to you as favorites or as particularly challenging that you've been able to fly to so far?
My favorite trip so far has been to Perryville in southwest Alaska along the Aleutian. This was a very special trip to me, not only for the scenery, of course, but because this little village is really not accessible any other ways than by plane. And they had not seen a big planes like that for years. And I will always remember we flew through the mountains, through a pass. And then I'm pretty sure that the people living in the village could hear the sound of the engine coming from far. And then once we could see the village, there was like a lot of smoke. Everything which had wheels would drive from the village to the airport. And then the next thing I remember is that we landed and there was everything with wheel around the airplane, and they were waiting for us to open the airplane. They were like, they found the plane so beautiful, of course, but you know, we had on board of this airplane on that day everything which can fit in a house, like furniture. So I thought it was just for one house, but it was actually one washing machine that they would share between 3 houses, one couch, one fridge. And so they all came to get these things, and that was a big moment for me. You know, again, what I was saying earlier, that these things we take for granted, and this is the way it is over there. So that was a particular trip for me, for the human aspect. Then for the flying part, the challenging part, this is when we fly to the mine, to the gold mine. It's west of Anchorage. It's about 1 hour flight. We provide them with drill pipes, with all construction equipment. And the landing here is a challenging one. It's really within the mountains, but it's always a challenge to land there. And of course, the pilot in command is very experienced, and I am just doing the SIC duties, but I'm learning a lot from them, and it's amazing to see what the airplane can do, really. Yep.
Excellent. Well, I look at the time and I see that we've had such great conversations here. Lindsay, do you have any questions from the chat that you would like to ask folks?
We do.
I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, we've got a few questions, and because we started a little late since we had a little streaming issue, which I also wanted to say is I was really attempting to show various photos and videos during this stream, but what was going on is each time I tried to, the entire screen went black. It didn't happen on the last broadcast, but for whatever reason, gotta love those technical issues. In any case, these ladies have done a phenomenal job. I've learned even so much more about each one of them, but we do have just a few questions that I've pinned here. One comes from Flying Fox. The question is, how do you train and get into smoke jumping?
Wow, that's a great question. Generally, what we like to consider smoke jumping as part of the upper elevation of a firefighting career. So you have to have had some firefighting background, which you can do in the Forest Service in lots of different places in the United States, and eventually possibly get onto a hotshot crew and then apply for jumping. But it's really pretty competitive. There were 687 people who applied the year I applied, and I think there was 17 of us who got on, and then 12 made it or something like that. So the application process is through the Forest Service, and you can just look that up. There's also a National Smoke Jumper Association website, which can give you lots of ideas and history and you know, what smoke jumping is about and that sort of thing.
Kim, thank you. We've got a question from our friend Paul Vandenberg, and he was very helpful in writing a fantastic piece on Kathleen Leone with Desert Air Alaska that has been shared with our DC-3 Society newsletter this past month. And his question for the pilots in the group, it's more operational question, is do you ever use derated takeoff power, for instance, on long runways? So for any of the pilots who would want to take a stab at that question.
Derated takeoff power. Oops.
We do not with Hairless Joe, we take off at full power, and then after climb out, or as we are climbing out, then we reduce power to more of a climb power setting.
Yeah, I would agree with Rachel. There was never any need, and we didn't never have that long runways anyway, so you used what you had.
Done it a few times with the private DC-3s that I've flown. If we're empty and we have a really long runway, and usually we talk to the owner beforehand and say, what do you think about this technique? And then we do it.
Thanks, ladies. And sort of a follow-up to that, Paul wanted to know, he said, for example, a 42-inch manifold air pressure instead of 48. Some say it's better for preserving the engines. Others say it is not. What are your thoughts about that?
I know that at Desert Air we never use the full power. We will use the maximum, the METO power. We want to preserve our engine for the day we will need it for real, if we need it for real, but we will never exceed it otherwise. Paul, do you have less technical questions?
There's just some conversation going on in live chat. We do have a young girl by the name of Brooklyn. She's 10 years old. This may be something nobody wants to answer publicly, but she just wanted to know if any of you have ever done any maybe aerobatic maneuvers or, you know, any low flying like Eleanor Smith flying under the New York bridges.
No aerobatics in the DC-3.
Or outside of the DC-3.
Yeah, yeah. Flew the OV-10 as a lead plane platform that was fully aerobatic, that type of thing. Lots of low-level flying though in the DC-3 and all the smoke jumper operations, lead plane as well. But that's all just part of the job. So it isn't thrill-seeking, and it's not something that you do just because it looks like, woohoo, let's have a little bit of fun today. But that's, like I said, our cargo drops in particular go out at 150 feet. Kim's in the back of the door with a 60-pound, 80-pound box of cargo waiting for my kick signal. And so you're down there low level and a lot of maneuvering in there. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. So it isn't the daredevil thrill seeking stunt that it looks like. It's an actual operational technique, and you have to be pretty serious about it. But it has its place.
I'll say hi to Brooklyn and Rebecca because they are very good friends of mine too. And yes, up at UND, I took a course specifically just to do aerobatics. And all we did was take the decathlon out. It looked like a little square box on our charts. And that was our box. We could go up and down as high as we wanted and do loops, do rolls, do whatever we wanted. No trick flying underneath the bridges. They knew better. They would watch us for that, but we still got to go have a lot of fun.
I haven't done any intentional aerobatics in DC-3s, but if you have any differential power or if your rudder's not centered when you're doing stalls in the DC-3, it can get a little uncomfortable. But other than that, the Air Force does a lot of aerobatics during training. It's about a 2 to 3 year process. So no matter what platform you're going to, you do aerobatics. So that was a lot of fun.
So I have a last question as we sort of wrap things up here. I think that we're obviously, in a little bit of a different time, but we are starting to get back to events. Our birds are starting to fly a bit more. Are any of you ladies going to be attending any future air shows where you may be displaying your DC-3 or showing your DC-3 or flying your DC-3 or any upcoming events that maybe anybody might see you there, or for folks that are tuning in, may be able to meet you there safely?
Our air show up at Willow Run Airport isn't until August 7th and 8th, but we are going to be featuring B-25s, and we will have Hairless Joe also be giving, I don't know if we're doing rides yet or not, but it will be on display. We're going to be doing flyovers. Our season for Hairless Joe actually starts May 1st and goes through about mid-October. And I know you will see it come. They're doing almost a daily, kind of like a shuttle run back and forth to Oshkosh, where we're bringing passengers and stuff back and forth from Michigan over to Wisconsin. I think it's 3 or 4 times. So you will see Hairless Joe coming and going both, and I'll be around with it.
The Deserter DC-3s, they will be operating full speed over the summer, so no Oshkosh. But if your path leads you to come to Anchorage, we'll be very happy to show you the shop and go see the airplanes as well.
That's exciting, Kathleen. I might actually take you up on that. I haven't been out to Alaska yet, so maybe coming for a visit. You might want to warn Joey now.
All right, Joey. She's coming.
Maybe I'll hand deliver his presents.
All right. She has presents for you.
Wonderful. Well, ladies, this has been a fantastic broadcast. I want to just share gratitude for you all taking the time out of your schedules to be here, to show up, to participate, to educate all of our audience. This is a recording, so we will be sharing this out to our platforms for those who could not tune in. a big thanks to Julie Boatman with Flying Magazine for helping us out again and moderating. Julie's been great to support us. The D-Day Squadron Flying Magazine is always helping recognize our efforts, share our efforts as we get out to shows here and there. We are starting to come back to events, and I just want to share a few last comments, is that as part of the D-Day Squadron, we do have what's called the DC-3 Society. The DC-3 Society is an opportunity to define, document, and really display the efforts of the DC-3. So really defining that maintenance, operations, airworthiness, documenting the history, the very rich history of this aircraft, but also we founded what's called the Young Historians Program. And we have young historians the ages of 16 to 24 between the US and Europe that are participating with our squadron, that get to document, get to research, and get to interview World War II veterans, as well as Vietnam War vets, as well as others in other combat missions and wartime efforts. And so they actually take part in writing our history, sharing the history, and writing that out to our newsletters, part of our squadron efforts in our DC-3 Society. We want to display more of this living history through education and outreach. So we're very excited to get back to these events. So speaking of events, a few things coming up for the D-Day Squadron and those involved with us. We will have a small presence at the Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo in Lakeland, Florida, April 13th through the 19th, or 13th through the 18th, actually. So far, we have coming Placid Lassie C-47, and we may have a few others that are coming on display or could be flying. We don't know yet, but we will update you through all of our social media channels. We also have 3 fantastic DC-3s coming for the Jim Pee Wee Martin 100th birthday celebration. It's a jump fest in Senior Ohio at the Skydive Greene County. That is April 22nd through the 25th. So that is D-Day Doll, That's All Brother, and Placid Lassie. We also have our next live broadcast, which is going to be on DC-3 restoration projects. So we will highlight Charlie Walker and Night Fright out in the UK, as well as Jason Capra of Beach City Baby out in Franklin, Pennsylvania. So stay tuned. We'll come out to you with a date late April for that DC-3 restoration live broadcast. Very excited to continue giving you all this opportunity to educate you, provide outreach about the DC-3. And we do have, I'm taking a poll right now with those that are planning to come to AirVenture so we can gather DC-3s and crews together. So I just want to end this live broadcast with another thank you to all of you wonderful ladies for being here. And we so appreciate you. So we're going to end now, and I guess we will see you all in the air.
Thank you, Lindsay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Hey, thank you so much, D-Day
Thanks for all you do.
Julie.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Ladies, if you could just stay on for a minute, I'm going to end the live broadcast and we'll say our goodbyes. Goodbye to everybody out there in the